In my world there is music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure and friendship. We know who we are.
Welcome to Be the Wellness Podcast, where we help you master your body, mind, and the experience of life through insightful conversation, interviews with experts and thought leaders, all with a side of marital banter and some good old-fashioned humor.
Yes, we are your hosts, Adam and Vanessa Lambert, and we're committed to helping you live life fully expressed physically, mentally, and experientially. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation.
Hello and welcome everybody to Be the Wellness Podcast. Adam and Vanessa Lambert are here podcasting for your enjoyment.
Yes, absolutely. And bringing on an awesome guest today,
Yes.
Dr. Mariza Snyder. Mm-hmm. And she's just a lovely human being.
She is.
Yeah. We definitely...
Yes.
We definitely hit it off.
Yeah, we did. And for those listening, we're only going to remind you a few more times. If you want to watch these and see what a lovely human being she is, you can check this out on our Facebook page. We're doing these things as Facebook Lives. So they're there. They live on our page, and you can check it out.
Yes.
Or you can listen here.
Or either way. We are here to serve your ear holes in any shape, way, or form that you will let us.
It's true.
So let's get to Dr. Mariza in just a moment. But first, I just want to run a couple of things by our audience because we are already into July, or almost to July, and which is crazy. I can't even believe that we are 7 months into the year. Like, it's just been a whirlwind. It felt like once Peru and New Zealand hit, it was just like, boom.
The year's over.
The year's over, yeah. But we do have some awesome events coming up towards the end of the year, and I wanted to keep everybody posted on how many spots we have because spaces are filling up, and if you want to do something with us in 2019, time is a-wasting.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 spots for female solo travelers in Montana. We've got 1 spot only for a female solo traveler in Costa Rica for our November retreat. And we have just 1 double queen room left for Rhythmia in December. So spaces are filling up, folks. And, you know, spaces for Peru are actually filling up really quickly, too. We only have a few left for that as well. So time to get in, start thinking about where you want to go, how you want to travel, and get in there and get signed up because it's happening.
Yeah, that's just the way it goes.
Absolutely, yes. So back to the lovely Dr. Mariza Snyder. She is an educator, Amazon bestselling author, wife, wellness advocate, and macho lover. That's actually not in her bio, but I'm going to throw that in because chest bumps from one macho lover to another. But, you know, Dr. Mariza, she works with essential oils a lot. And, you know, obviously we're going to get into the conversation and you can hear a lot about the multi-pronged approach that she really takes with people and really looking at their wellness in a holistic manner. But she does really specialize in hormones and specifically essential oils for hormones. And she just released a brand new book on Amazon called The Essential Oils Hormone Solution. It's been a bestseller. I think it was on the bestsellers list for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's got lots of great information. You know, we love essential oils. We integrate them. If you've ever been on a Be the Wellness retreat with us, we use them, you know? Yeah. We really we bust them out and we use them frequently. So, you know, they're really something that's embedded into the way that we work our lives. And there's just tons of ways that this plant medicine can be beneficial to you.
Yeah. Totally. And I mean, and I think it's just showing up more and more.
Yes.
You know, and there's actually studies and stuff that are coming out on it, you know, which of course is like a big thing for me to get on board. And then, you know, talking with people like Dr. Snyder, who's just, I mean, she completely understands the science and the chemistry of how all of this stuff works. And we dive into it a little bit towards the end of the podcast and kind of get into the weeds a little.
Yes.
Which of course is my, you know, I like the weeds.
You like the weeds? Yeah.
But it's, it's cool stuff.
Would that make you a weed eater? someone who likes to consume weeds?
I'm not saying I like to consume weeds.
Oh, okay.
I'm just, I like to be in them.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I'm a weed
You're a
lover.
weed bather.
Something like that. I'm weedy.
You're weedy. Okay.
I'm weedy.
Awesome. Well, we're really excited to get to this conversation. So let's just hop in. Here is Dr. Mariza Snyder.
And we're live. Welcome to the podcast, Mariza.
Hello. Thanks for having me. So great.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. And, our audience, we announced last week that we're starting to have our guests live on our Facebook, and you're our second guest to be there. So thank you for helping us kind of wade through the technology and, get it all sorted out, because it can be a doozy. So we appreciate you. Right out the gate, you're already scoring major points over here.
Yay. I love scoring a lot of points.
Awesome.
Yes.
So we would love to just tee this whole thing off by just getting you to introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about your background. And of course, how you got interested in essential oils, because this is something that our audience is really interested in. I'm obsessed with, and I'm just really excited to see, and to learn about you, your backstory, and how that all came together for you.
Absolutely. So yeah, definitely a story to tell here. So if I were to fast forward about 10 to 11 years, I was definitely in the midst of what I thought was hormone chaos or body chaos. I just didn't know what was going on. And at the time I was in practice, I was seeing a lot of women who were struggling as well, who couldn't really pinpoint what was going on with them. They were getting the runaround from a lot of other doctors. And as I was in that space, I really began to, try to figure out what was going on with me. I remember going to a gynecologist and having my labs run, because you always want labs to kind of validate what you got going on.
Sure.
And I always say you can't really treat anything until you've tested it. We got to know what's happening. Oprah always says, know your numbers. So I really believe that. So sure enough, I went to go see what my numbers were like, and they were not looking that great. Cortisol was out of control. Estrogen and progesterone had been affected by that. And I remember this doctor scripted me up, and she scripted me up a birth control pill, and she scripted me up an anti-anxiety medication, which, by the way, I wasn't having anxiety, but she was just like, here you go. Yeah. And I remember looking down at these medications, and I was like, oh, hell no. And I thought, and I didn't fulfill those scripts. I knew, I was like, I need to understand how I got here. What's the root cause? What's the environment at play? And I knew way back, if I go back a little bit further, I was a biochemist for many years before that. And the one thing I knew how to do was I was a bulldog for research. And I knew that there were answers. I knew that there were doctors, there were integrative doctors that were healing women. I also knew that my story was not unique. I just may have been a little bit younger than than women, although we're seeing this into our late 20s, 30s. We have women and young girls even struggling with hormone issues out the gate. And so I spent the next 3 years really digging into the nutrition, the self-care. I had a big aha moment that really, really helped me to get kind of past that last hump. But the one thing I hadn't cleared up was I was chronically sick all the time. Colds and flus and strep throat. And I swear to goodness, it was like a rotation. One would come on in after the other. It was like a tag team. And I was getting sick a lot. And a good friend of mine came over who connected with me a lot. And she was like, oh my gosh, you were always sick. What is wrong with you? And it wasn't like I wasn't drinking all the tinctures, as nasty as it was. I drank all of it. I was doing the vitamins, everything, trying to get myself well, because I was missing so much practice. She brought an oil blend over to me, and she's like, try this. And at this point, it was just adding to the regimen of all the things I was doing. I added it to the regimen. I did all the things I could do with that oil, probably things I shouldn't have been doing with it. And fast forward 3 years, I did not get a cold or a flu or a whole lot of nothing in that whole time. I missed out on 30 colds and flus. Wow. Let me tell you, I didn't miss one of them. So that's what opened my door to essential oils in a nutshell.
Awesome. And which oil was that?
It was a proprietary blend. It had eucalyptus, oregano, melaleuca. It had rosemary. And so I went to start researching all these oils and their chemical constituents, and come to find out essential oils are antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral. And there were research articles with dark field microscopy, which is what I used to do in my lab. I used to be in a dark room. And let me tell you, it's a very antisocial experience.
Yeah,
I wasn't meant to do that for the rest of my life. Look at bacteria and viruses. And so, but it was really crazy. You could see how these oils actually stop the replication of viral DNA to our DNA, because that's how viruses work. They hijack.
Yes.
It's what they do in our computers. Hopefully not. But so that was really cool. And I was so fascinated by this that I could actually see it. And so I started digging into the research. I'm like, what else can these things do? And it was a whole new world. I feel like Aladdin right now.
Awesome. No, I love this, and I think it's really, it's cool to really stop and kind of hover on this point, because I think that folks who aren't familiar with essential oils and aren't familiar with plant medicine, they kind of put it in that sort of hippy dippy zone where they're like, oh yeah, that's like alternative, sort of for hippies. But when you actually start digging, there's a ton of research around essential oils. And, even when you look at the pharmaceuticals, a lot of them are derivatives from these plant-based, oils or ingredients. So it's kind of interesting when you really start to look at it. There's actually a lot of legitimate information around these essential oils supporting how efficacious they are.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Plant medicine, and we think about it, I am in such reverence of this earth and of plants and their healing modalities, even nutrition. We think about the greatest nutrition out there, the greatest herbs for healing. No surprise that we're able to leverage these chemical constituents in a way that's just very easy. And so the more and more, I have a lot of dear friends who are botanists and who just are, plants are their life. It's what they do every day. And they, when I sit down with them, I'm always so mind blown by the power of plants. And I think what essential oils do, just even having plants in our home and like I said, consuming plants every day, whether it's spinach or kale or celery juice, whatever you're doing. But essential oils it's just an easy application of leveraging those chemical constituents. And what's so cool about it is our bodies, we're like, it is meant to be. We're like peanut butter and jelly when it comes to plant medicine. And so our bodies know how to leverage it. they literally can break apart the chemical constituents of these oils, bind to molecules in our own cells and do what they want. It's like like Legos, putting together in the body. Yeah.
And it's a really important thing, I think, to think about, because, and this is something we talk about a lot with our coaching clients and just to anyone who will listen, is that when we're trying to affect change in the body, fundamentally, it seems to make a lot of sense to go as far upstream as possible and give your body the inputs that it needs to then do what it needs to do, just like you were saying, with the individual constituents of whatever, it is, whether that's exercise or whether that's an essential oil or just your own nutrition. And where we seem to get really crossed up with this stuff is when we try to pinpoint one specific thing that you can then, ultimately patent and sell, and sell for one specific thing. But now you're affecting something that might be towards the bottom of the funnel, and who knows what else is going on. It seems to be where a lot of the side effect stuff comes from, when we're dealing with this. So I think it's such a cool modality for change in your body with, aside from taste, depending on how you do stuff, not a lot of downside,
No, not a lot of downside. And I think a lot of, one of the things when I grew up, we grew up on do you guys remember the Tylenol liquid, like the bright orange stuff? I know.
Oh yeah.
And everything the doctor said, we took at heart. And I didn't feel like we were making a lot of those decisions. I felt like we had given a lot of our health away, that we were like, whatever the doctor says, and I think the tide is turning now at the moment, because people always ask me why essential oils. And I always say it's because they work. It's because they work. That's why essential oils right now. And I think moms and families are looking for ways to empower themselves back in their own homes. And they, we were on a 5-week trip to Europe. We just got back last week, and we brought 20 oils with us. And you know what? That was conservative for some people in the oil world. And Alex had some, my husband had some, I had some. And everything came up, from headaches to kink necks to Alex had we were in Piedmonte, which is in northern Italy, and he had an allergy outbreak, and he never has allergies, but we had oils for that. And so things were coming up every single day that we had an oil for. And it was so nice. There were pharmacies everywhere, in Europe, but we never needed to go to them, which is, it just felt really good that we were prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We run adventure retreats. And so I've gotten to the point now where I have like half my pack is, all these different essential oil blends and rubs and all these kinds of things, because you never know what you're going to come across. And, it's been kind of an issue for me coming into different countries. They're like pulling out this bag of scents and they're looking at it and having the dog sniff it. And I'm like, it's just oils. But yeah, I totally get that. And it really does come in handy, especially when you're traveling, you're getting exposed to all these different bacterias and viruses and all of the stuff that your body's not used to. And one of our combos that we use all the time is Melaleuca, oregano, and
On Guard.
And On Guard, from doTERRA. And that, like, I swear to God, if you start to feel something, put those 3 in a cap with a little bit of, carrier oil and start taking those. And I'm telling you, it like just blasts out of your system whatever's going on.
Yeah.
That's an obliterator blend right there.
It really is. It like gets it. Yeah. So, okay, Mariza, I really want to dive into some of the hormone stuff because I know that our audience will be super into this. So I think the best way to do this is to actually just start from the beginning. So if you have someone that comes to you and they're dealing with a variety of symptoms, say maybe hot flashes or, on the other end of it, maybe heavy periods or cramping or just, whatever it has, whatever that particular person has, what's sort of the process that you go through with them to sort of decipher what the best path or what some of the best oils for them would be?
Absolutely. I think the first step when we talked about Oprah knowing your numbers, it's important to see what's going on. Oftentimes the sexy hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, aren't really the ones that are, although they can be imbalanced, they may not be where the root cause is. Mm-hmm. It could be the thyroid. It could be cortisol. It could be your liver is congested. A lot of women don't know that oftentimes hot flashes are related to your liver being really sluggish, and we gotta figure out how to get the liver working properly. And so that the first step is testing. So one of my favorite tests to run is the Dutch test, but I have a whole slew of labs that I really recommend just so I can get a sense of what's happening. I want to know the triggers. I want to know the root causes, because if they're having symptoms here, what else could be going on? You guys talked about upstream and how it's important to be looking at, what's the whole integrative approach. When we dial things down to one little thing and we focus on that, we're missing the whole point. Just like the whole of the plant, we need to look at the whole of the body. So first step is testing. I got to understand what's going on in the body. And the hormones that I'm really looking at, like I said, some of the heavier players, the bigger players, not the sexy ones, but insulin, cortisol, and thyroid hormones. Those are some of the ones that I'm looking at first. Then, because usually if I can clear all that, I can actually fix a lot of what's going on with estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, those types of hormones. So once I get that clear picture, we really start to adopt more of an integrative plan. Oftentimes it could be reducing our toxic load. Always it has to do with food as foundational. But the beautiful thing about essential oils is that I feel like they bridge the gap to make a lot of those habits that we need to put into play. I like to call those habits rituals. It sounds a little bit nicer, a little bit cooler. And so how we can bring and integrate those rituals in and make them a little bit more seamless. When we're on this journey, and goodness knows, I know that journey all too well, it's frustrating. It feels challenging. There's so much else going on. And how can we bring a little bit of ease and grace into the mix? And that's a big part of what I think oils can do. Now, oils can specifically reduce cravings. They can boost working memory, reduce brain fog. They can reduce stress levels like that. And they can reduce menstrual cramps and hot flashes. They can do all those things, but I really do love it when people are using them as a part of creating those rituals, of shifting into that integrative plan so that it's just making their life easier as they're making those changes.
Totally makes sense. It's like, to have these changes really be long lasting and to get the most efficacy out of all of these plant medicines, it's so important that you have that foundation of self-care. And it's so much easier, I think, for the plant medicines to really work on you when you're giving them that platform, so to speak. So I love that. That's so awesome. So from there, so you've kind of started to create those rituals, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what those are, because obviously food is foundational, but what are some of the other rituals that you really encourage people to start investigating and looking at?
Absolutely. Well, what a lot of what I see with women, maybe because a lot of what I saw with myself, that first step in healing, I told you guys it took me about 2 to 3 years to really figure it out. And it wasn't like I wasn't drinking a lot of green juice and a lot of green smoothies. I was checking the boxes off. I'm a great box checker.
Yeah.
But there was I would say this mode of operation that I was very unconscious, this kind of disempowering belief that was way deep down there that I hadn't even addressed. And I kept trying to pour green smoothies on top of it. And I just wasn't solving the problem. I kept finding myself back to where I started. I was like, there's not an essential.
There's not enough kale for this.
Yes, not enough kale, not enough essential oil, there's not enough lavender for this problem. And so that first step, I think, is what it was is that I thought my worth was predicated on how much I did for others and how much I just did in general. And I was just this constant machine. And I needed to, I don't know exactly when that epiphany happened. I was through journaling. I was doing a lot of self-development and personal development. And there was finally this aha moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm worthy to get well. And I had no idea. I was doing all the motions, but so that I think is so important, is to kind of dig deeper into what really could be that emotional aspect is a root cause. It can really drive other things. And so I have women start initially, which is your morning rituals, where that is your time. You're protecting your energy. And every morning I start with essential oils. I wake up with essential oils, especially citruses. They boost happy neurotransmitters right out the gate. I've got my big glass of lemon water, lemon ginger water with apple cider vinegar, my smoothies, because they never disappeared. Green smoothies come into play, journaling, especially gratitude journaling. It's so easy to have it's hard to be upset in life when you just spent 15 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it was, reminding yourself why everything's so good. And so there's a lot of those pieces, but although I have all these pieces in place for my morning ritual, it's really that it's my time, that it's sacred and it doesn't belong to anybody else. And it allows me to set the tone for my day. It allows me to stay on purpose and on mission. And so I'm not just, the second you get into Instagram, your email, I always say email is other people's priorities. And that's all email is to me. I'm like, somebody needs something from me right now. Yep. Every 60 seconds, somebody needs something from me. And so, the second you get in there, you're totally off track, right? You're not, and as women, and I think men too, but women in particular, you want to start handling other people's stuff. You're like, okay, let me see, check. And so that is a big part of it. I think that we gotta say yes to us. That's that first start, even just that first 15 minutes in the day.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah,
and saying yes to us is not a diet soda. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's so true. It's a good, distinction.
Yeah, it's a super important distinction because I think, and I'm all for the sort of self-care movement that seems to be happening, right? Everybody's like, look, you got to take care of you so that you can take care of other people. And I think that's 100% right on. But unfortunately, that does end up looking like indulgences sometimes. You're like, well, they said they got to take care of me, and what me wants is a donut. This is what I'm interested in right now. And
cappuccino.
Yeah, and not to say that when one's not going to kill you, but when you're thinking about this stuff in general and developing the habits or rituals that you're talking about, I mean, it can become a slippery slope. This thing of, okay, well, I'm taking care of me, and that looks like this, and so all of these things are now okay because this is how I, continue to move forward. And I've certainly seen where it's true, right? So as soon as somebody actually does start doing something for themselves, even if it isn't necessarily a healthy thing, they do sort of regain a power to help the people around them and to kind of move through the day and just feel that bit of empowerment. And it's like, just imagine what that would be like if the thing that you did to feel empowered was actually good for you.
Right.
It's like, then you're taking this whole thing to the next level,
I live in such a bubble. I don't even think about people doing self-care that isn't good for them. I mean, the diet coke just barely popped into my head because I think self-care is survival. At least for me, it is. It's absolute survival because it's basically self-care to me. It's all the healthy habits, all the healthy rituals that I do every single day. Because, the decisions that we make, we all know this, whether it's in our career, in our health, or in our life, those daily decisions, that's what's adding up. That's what's going to end up getting us down the road into our 60s and 70s or 80s. That's going to have a massive impact on our hormones. A lot of people don't realize hormones are chemical messengers. And those chemical messengers are constantly running around like a chicken with their head cut off, trying to figure out what you are doing right now. They're like, okay, now she's over here. Okay, now she just had that diet soda. I don't know why that's on my mind, but like I haven't had a diet soda since I was 19 years old. But, they're just trying to mediate what you've got going on. And that's why I think hormones are the first ones to throw the red flag. They're the first or the white flag. They're saying SOS, something isn't right here. And that's what we have to be listening to. We have to be in tune with that. But what I love is that as we make those small changes, it doesn't take much time. It can take 7 days, 10 days, 14 days to feel major shifts, because your hormones really will shift according to the things that you're doing on a day-to-day.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So I'd love to dive a little bit into some of the actual mechanics of how this all works, because, when we talk about essential oils, if we, for instance, we take oregano and we know it's antiviral, antimicrobial, you've got a pretty clear picture of how that might work in your body. But I'd love to take a deeper dive into how some of the essential oils really work on the hormone pathways. And so I don't know if it would be good to maybe start with, an essential oil or two, and how it might affect estrogen or testosterone, or maybe, some that you see that are very common for you that are sort of top level that you use a lot. I'd love to just talk about how they actually affect the pathways and how they really elicit change in the body.
Absolutely. Well, the big one I would like to start with, the kind of one of those, and I want to get to the estrogen and progesterone too. The one that I see a lot of HPA axis deregulation, and that's the hypothalamic pituitary axis. For those who are listening, I hadn't heard of that before. We normally call that adrenal fatigue, but ultimately it's really happening in the brain first. It's happening in the limbic system, and that cascade. I think when we look at a hormone like cortisol, we don't realize how all-encompassing that hormone is in terms of insulin regulation, fat metabolism, in terms of, cortisol in its own right is a powerful, insulin regulator. And we don't really think about that. Also, it has a profound impact on our immune system, hence why I was sick so much. And it has also a profound impact on our respiratory system, how we bring sugar to our muscles, glycogen to our muscles, and how we manage stress, even perceived stress. And so I find that the majority of us, and research can back that up, that we're stressed pretty consistently throughout the month, throughout the week, potentially throughout the day. And those stressors can come in a lot of different ways. One of the biggest ones, I think, is perceived stress. And what I love, let's take a chemical constituent. Let's take lavender oil. That's a good one. It's an easy one. So lavender oil has lavandin, and that particular chemical constituent, when you breathe it in through the olfactory bulb, cranial nerve number 1, we have a no holds bar. It's the only sense that we can go directly into the brain without any modulation from the thalamus or the brainstem, which is so cool. And the reason for that is our sense of smell is directly connected to our sense of survival. And guess what? Our number one mode of operation above all else, although I don't think we think about it a lot, is to live. We got to survive.
Totally.
Every cell in the body is hardwired for survival. Even your thyroid hormone your thyroid is hardwired for survival. Your skin, your body, we're always set. It's literally, we're in stranger danger mode at all times.
Right.
And so, because your body's like, what's going on? And so that part of the limbic system, the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus is where all of our hormones are being communicated in there, the pituitary gland. I feel like that's where a lot of things can get disrupted. So by breathing in that chemical constituent like lavandin, we breathe that in, it goes straight into the limbic system, and it really begins to make shifts and changes. It can change our chemistry. It can increase GABA. It can reduce the way that our hypothalamus is receiving information from the external world. And so what I usually recommend people do, because not always are we going to know when we're feeling stressed. You'll have a friend or a family member who it's obvious that they're in overwhelm mode, and you're like, maybe you should take it down a notch, and then they just bite your head off. I'm not stressed, And so I think a lot of people don't know. I know I didn't know for so long that I was pretty much living right here, And so what I tell people is one great thing about your phone is that you can have have it on a chime every 60 seconds or every 60 minutes where it just goes off, not a fire alarm, like some alarm, like a chime, something Deepak Chopra would have created with his team.
Right.
And that if you grab an oil blend that you've made up, a stress blend, whatever that may be, with lavender, bergamot, ylang-ylang, all of these chemical constituents are calming, and they can literally slow down our perception of stress. And by breathing that in, especially with 5 conscious breaths, we shift the way that we downregulate that HPA axis. We lower serum cortisol levels, we lower blood pressure, and we lower pulse point within 60 seconds or less.
It's so amazing. And do you think that a lot of this is predicated on the fact that historically, when we were in sort of that parasympathetic drive, or we were not stressed, we were, smelling the flowers, so to speak. We're stopping to take in the scents around us, and we were, able to kind of take in nature around us in a different way? Or what do you think that pathway is that actually changes affects the limbic system in the way that it does to really calm and move you into that parasympathetic drive?
That is such a great question. I don't know if I've thought a lot about that. I know a lot about the chemistry itself and what it's doing, but I hadn't thought about, why plants, why, and florals. I mean, think about florals in particular, jasmine, clary sage, lavender, rose. All of them are going to have the same effect, to be honest, and everyone's going to respond a little bit differently, and you're going to resonate with something. But then wood oils like sandalwood, cedarwood, frankincense, vetiver, that they're very, very grounding, right? And people feel that. I think about like vetiver and lavender as being one of the best sleep aids out there. That they both together really spike GABA levels and help with melatonin inside, and really get us into circadian rhythm. And so I hadn't really thought about, because I don't know if we're definitely more stressed today than we've ever been, but I always feel like we've kind of been stressed forever. So
it's just so interesting, because I really do think about that. When we go on our walks, we live in Venice Beach, which seems like, there wouldn't be a lot of plant life because it's near the beach, but there's actually tons of flowers and everything grows so well here. And I stop all the time taking sniffs of jasmine and roses. And every time I do, I just have this like instant calming sensation. And I think, I try to put that back together with like our ancestors. And I think, well, we were gatherers, and it makes sense that somewhere intrinsically, somewhere genetically, we associate those scents, and so does our body, and so does the reaction to them, as being in a de-stressed state or in a calm state. And so I just always think that could potentially be the reason why these scents really do have that sensation on our body. Who knows?
It's possible. And also, maybe nature always knew we were going to be a hot mess.
Yeah.
And it was just waiting for us, to leverage it. It's such a good question. I do breathe. I smell the flowers. My husband says that I'm abusing the flowers, but I really get into the roses, and that I still can be stressed too. So it's an interesting thing to be thinking about. What I also love about the chemistry is that I always tell in a really fun way is that you can really sabotage people with the chemistry. Like you could have somebody you work with. I know we're all very blessed. We get to work with people that we love, but that's not always the case for a lot of people. And I've had women in dental offices who just do not get along in a very small space, or other offices. And, someone puts a cotton ball of jasmine or a citrus oil or a diffuser under people's desks and, really sets them up for a shift in emotion, a shift in stress levels. Same with at home with kids studying, you can diffuse rosemary and peppermint for not only boosting working memory, because we know that acetylcholine, or that rosemary boosts acetylcholine inside of the brain. Peppermint oxygenates the brain to boost mitochondrial levels. And so there's that combination there. But we see it in classrooms all across the world where they're diffusing these oils so that kids are more focused. Or even at home, my husband is a night owl. And he's oftentimes sending our emails to our people at like 2 a.m, 1 a.m. And sometimes I'm like, okay, he needs to go to bed. So I'll put a diffuser by his face and I'll diffuse lavender, sandalwood, and I know the combo where he doesn't stand a chance.
I love this so much, because I'm always wishing and like praying that it was legal for me to drug people. And this is actually a legal way. I'm like, I'm going to really do this. This is awesome.
It's so true. Emotionally, I have bad flight anxiety, and I'm on a plane a lot. I'm on a plane tomorrow, I think, and I use oils a lot. I got my favorite music. I got my journal. I've got my oils. I got a whole thing, and I have a flight ritual. And I can't tell you how many times I've pulled out these oils to use them for myself. And people in front of me, behind me, side me, everywhere, people are just like, "What? Can I have that? I need that." Just flying over the thing, and just like, oh my, because I'm clearly, again, not a unique situation. Probably a third of the plane people are dealing with that at one level or a next. And clearly there's synthetic ways to manage that, but oils have always been my go-to.
Love it. Love it.
So let's talk a little bit more about the sexier hormones, right? The estrogen, the progesterone, because I think, in dealing with our coaching clients and the folks in our community, this is often when people discover that there might be something going on, like with perimenopause or actual menopause or something like that. They've gotten the test and they're like, oh wow, this is completely out of whack, and so then they're presented with a host of options, which sometimes aren't that great, right? And it's like, well, you can go on bioidentical hormones, or you can just let nature run its course, or you can kind of do your thing. And so I'd be curious to know, kind of, once somebody's at that point, and obviously, everybody's a little bit unique, so not looking for like a treatment protocol, but just kind of how do you approach that, and what levels of effect have you seen once you've gotten to the point that preventative maintenance is maybe not everything that's going to solve the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is actually my next book. Perimenopause. I'm knee deep in the research right now as I work on. I don't start writing it for the next couple of months, but I've been knee deep in the research, and I'm trying to figure out like the question of, well, I don't think, heading into perimenopause and menopause, and I feel like perimenopause can be this crazy transition where we really don't know what's going on. No one seems to be telling us what time it is or what's up. And medical doctors up until like 2000 and I want to say 2000, maybe the early 2000s, it was just the second women came in with those types of menopausal types of symptoms, they just put them on Premarin. Every woman needed to be on Premarin. That was just the way it was. And now we know, no, not a good idea. And, so I think a lot of the medical system, they're still in that mindset of like, okay, you're showing up and presenting with these problems. We're going to put you on bioidenticals. And I don't think, again, we're getting to the core root of what's going on. I don't think a decrease, because the first hormone that begins to decrease is progesterone, mainly because ovulation begins to shift, and we know that we've got to ovulate in order to get progesterone. It's the most scarce of them all. It's the most precious of them all. It's progesterone, and it's the one that can make us feel all kinds of ways, one way or the other, and so. As we start to slowly decrease progesterone, that can start as early as 35, 36 years old. But usually women begin to really start to feel it in their early 40s. My gut and my thought, I think about that women weren't meant to suffer. And
no, we weren't.
Because they're on the decline doesn't mean we should be struggling, and then estrogen begins to start, yo-yoing around and kind of like a roller coaster. But I've been looking at this a lot, and this is kind of the first time I'm kind of sharing this, but I don't, for me, with these hormones shifting, and not to say that there aren't symptoms associated with that, there's a bigger picture. There's something else that's going on, and I really think it lends to inflammation. And so that's really the first step, is I really start to look at what's going on with inflammatory markers. But we know we're talking about essential oils and how they can have an impact. And what we know about essential oils is, one, they're not hormones. I'm going to put that out there, right? They're not bioidentical hormones. But what we do know about essential oils is that they can clean up receptor sites. They can make binding. It's one thing, you can slather all the progesterone cream on in the world. But that may not be the problem. You may not have receptor sites that are receiving. Maybe there's a decrease in sensitivity that we're not seeing. Maybe the low progesterone really isn't that low. It's because we have an insane amount of estrogen metabolites out in the system because the liver isn't processing them through the detox pathways through proper methylation. So, we get to see this broader picture. I don't mean to complicate things more, but I do want to take it out a little bit. And like I said, oftentimes, I had a quote that I put on Instagram the other day, and it says that if a flower isn't blooming, we don't look at the flower, we look at the environment. We're not like, oh, flower, this is your fault.
Right.
You know,
you're doing it wrong.
And so when we're thinking about estrogen and progesterone, so often something's happening to them. Those reproductive hormones. And so I want to look at the environment of what's going on. As essential oils are great because essential oils, we know, have the ability to open up. They boost glutathione levels. They open up the methylation pathways. They open up the detox pathways. They can help the gut and peristalsis so that we're pushing estrogen out, because estrogen's a hormone. It really is. You need to use it and lose it. It can't be lingering about. It's not meant to do that. And so I want to make sure that we're properly disposing of estrogen correctly. And there oils like geranium and oils like clary sage really allow, and rosemary allow they allow the liver to properly metabolize estrogen better. So that's one way that I like to look at that. If we're starting to see that women are beginning to feel depressed and bloated and uterine, not just uterine fibroids, but breast fibroids, you know, those types of symptoms. PMS is getting worse, mood swings, irritability. That shows me something's going on with progesterone. But then I also need to be looking at estrogen. And then I need to be looking at the liver, and I need to be looking at cortisol. So I need to be looking at those other pieces. But in terms of just managing symptoms, because we deserve that too, as you can imagine, cleaning up the liver is not, you know, it doesn't happen in a day. Managing stress levels doesn't happen in just a day, although I do love oils for doing that in those emergency moments. But like, I love that lavender and clary sage are great for lowering prostaglandins so that we're not dealing with menstrual cramps. We're not dealing with menstrual pain and bloating. They're phenomenal for decreasing bloating as well. And they're amazing for dealing with anxiety and depression when we're in the end of our luteal phase, heading into our period. So those are
Mariza, really quick, just to pop in there. Is that taken? Are you taking that topically, or are you taking that orally?
Topically.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Topically, right over 3 inches below the belly button, right over the ovaries and the uterus. I'm a big fan of path of least resistance, like get it in there.
Right.
So I roll oils over my my lower abdomen all the time. I'll confess, I'm on my period right now. I've been spicy, and you know, and so I've been using a lot of oils, not only over that, but using oils for mood support. You know, mood is always my thing. And my menstrual cycle is always an indicator of what I had done last month. You know, how did I do? And when we were in the middle of the book launch, it was crazy town, you know, and so my periods were worse than normal. I was not only using my oils all the time, but I was making sure that I was taking all my supplements. I was on my green juices because I knew that I was combating a lot of inflammation that I was self-inflicting on myself.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Oh, it really all comes back to inflammation.
Yeah. Well,
I want to make it like, ooh, this oil, bam, estrogen's fixed. But it's usually because there's a lot of other pieces going in play. I always want to give the magic bullet, and I want to give all of it. I want to be real and truthful about the deal.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, and it seems like the magic bullet is actually like a shotgun. You know what I mean? There's a billion different little BBs in there that have to cover a lot of ground, you know? Yeah. And I mean, and this is why, you know, we advocate for low inflammatory diets one way or the other, whatever that means for the individual, is to start to curb some of this stuff. And I'd like to dive in a little bit because to the Dutch test and how it can be useful for this, because we actually a while back, Vanessa had the Dutch test done, and then we had Carrie from Precision Analytical come on, and kind of went through it and it was one of the most fascinating podcasts. I mean, for me personally, and for our folks out there, and I think one of the things that became really clear from that test versus, you know, serum tests that I'd had done for various things over the years, is that you can really start to break down what pathway the problem exists in. At least this was my sort of rudimentary understanding of that, is you can look and say, okay, well, for whatever reason, you're not clearing estrogen or you're not clearing progesterone. Now we can look, you know, via the magic of the Dutch test sort of scatter chart that they give you, and you can start to look at these individual little spots. And so I'm curious if that is more or less your process to some degree, where you can look at that and maybe have somebody do the 30-day cycle map and really get a picture of what's going on. because this is kind of all over the place here, but this is another problem that we tend to see with folks who, I mean, obviously we're not doctors, but occasionally we have people who will share their blood work with us, and you can end up, you're like, okay, well, how sure are you of what phase you were in when you had this blood work done? And you could be making decisions based on something that may not be real for you. You know what I mean? You might have been a day off here or 2 days off here.
Yeah, we had, go on. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. And so I was just going to say, like, with that process, I mean, it seems to me that it's like, if you're not doing that, if you're going to a practitioner and you're trying to get this whole thing sorted out, and let's say you are already eating a super clean, like a paleo diet or something that's got you, inflammatory markers are down and all of this, and you're really getting to this point, if you're not kind of doing a Dutch test cycle map, how else are you going to know like what is really going on here,
Absolutely. I mean, and that's exactly the thing that I was talking about earlier, which is, if we can't really get the full scope, it's, how do we really, really know what's going on? I was on a webinar, and a woman came on, and she was talking about how she was put on the DIM supplement for metabolizing estrogen, and DIM standing for methane. And she was basically on Amazon and saw that it said hormone balance and started to take it, and didn't realize that this particular supplement was designed to clear estrogen in one of the detox pathways. And it wasn't clear if she had an estrogen issue at all to begin with. Right. And so when we look at a Dutch test, Dutch test is looking at urine metabolites, and not only are we looking at free total, but also how we're using hormones like cortisol, estrogen, estradiol, progesterone, DHEA, and it just gives us a sense of what's going on. So if we think about estrogen metabolites, we think about, phase 1 being the hydroxylation of estrogens, and then the phase 2 being the methylation. And there's 3 different pathways: the 2-hydroxy, the 16-hydroxy, and the 4-hydroxy. And 2-hydroxy is the most favorable. We want to make sure that we're going down that pathway. And we want to make sure that we're limiting the 4-hydroxy pathway. And I don't want to go into all the details and all the steps. And clearly you would have a doctor. You wouldn't just get the Dutch test, and you wouldn't be forced to read it yourself. Yeah. It's very complicated. But you would have a practitioner who was able to go over that to create an integrative plan. And that really dials in to what specific is going on. I do think that it's super important as we're looking at it. I know when I have women mapping out their menstrual cycle, there's a way that when we look at the menstrual cycle consistently over several months, if you are really good at interpreting, you can see if maybe there's a thyroid issue with the way that your menstrual cycle is functioning. I think the more and more we understand how our bodies work, the more and more we can track things like our menstrual cycle. I have a good friend who wrote the book, The Fifth Vital Sign. Knowing your menstrual cycle is that important for understanding how your body functions. It's the key indicator of what else may be going on in the body. So yes, I do think it's important to have that level of testing, especially if for some reason all the things that you're doing isn't working. Like for some reason, you're not really getting to the root of it. At the end of the day, I will say though, that you can't go wrong, eating a plant-focused diet. You can't go wrong moving your body every single day. You can't go wrong sleeping a good 7 to 8 to 9 hours a day. You can't go wrong with drinking a lot of water. And you can't go wrong with finding techniques and ways to reduce stress levels. All of that's playing a role. And I think those are foundational and baseline. Then if those types of things aren't really fully resolving what's going on, then we got to look deeper. We got to look at root cause triggers. We got to look at things like gut infections, chronic infections, nutrient deficiencies. I was recently diagnosed with Hashimoto's and hypothyroid, and it was devastating. And the first thing we wanted to know, okay, how did this come to be? Okay, let's say stress was a part of it. Most likely was, and it definitely was. But what else is playing a role? Is there some type of gut issue that I don't know about? Is there some type of hidden infection? Or is there major nutrient deficiencies that I'm not aware of as well? And so that was the next step, is how do we start to look and find these root cause triggers? But the only way we're able to do that, only way I was able to do that is through testing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really interesting because at the end of the day, and this is what I love about interviewing different practitioners from different walks of life is that everyone is saying, some of the same key things, just maybe in different language or with different emphasis. But at the end of the day, it really is this holistic approach of food, sleep, nourishment besides food, meaning like you're actually taking care of yourself. And it's so great for people to keep hearing this in different ways. And I love that, like, no matter who we're talking to, if they have it together, these are the things that we're hearing. And that's what I'm hearing from you, which is just awesome. So one of the things I really want to dive into as we kind of wrap this up is talking about the liver. And, we know the liver is kind of the keys to the castle, so to speak, in sort of clearing out the pathway and optimizing all the function of the body. So maybe you can just quickly talk about, what your process is for maybe, a full liver detox. And if you're really trying to get someone who maybe, has some fatty liver disease or something like that going on, all the way to someone who maybe is just trying to boost some of the liver function.
Absolutely. Here's the deal. I think everybody needs to work on the liver. Your liver has hundreds and hundreds of, and I think that's only what we know. Yeah. I think the liver's probably got a couple thousand jobs. And so it's one of those, gosh, so many organs are so important, but the gut's getting a lot of love right now. Everything's about the microbiome. And where's the moment in the sun for the liver? I think it's coming.
I totally agree.
So, and so to me, I really believe that every day should be a liver day. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel about it. I feel like every day we should be taking the right supplement, making sure that we're taking activated B vitamins, we're making sure that the methylation is open, maybe taking liposomal glutathione. There's just specific supplements to be taking, make sure that we're taking enough magnesium and looking to see what's going on, addressing those nutrient deficiencies. Those are big ones for the liver, and that we're drinking enough. I mean, some of the simple steps. I was talking to my dear friend, Dr. Tom O'Brien, who wrote the Autoimmune Fix, and his new book is You Can Fix Your Brain. But we talked a lot about the liver. And he's like, that first step in detoxification is just making sure we drink enough water. Yeah. And as simple as that is, it's something that we all can struggle. A lot of people just aren't drinking enough water. And that just seems like such a simple one. So when I think about fatty liver, I also want to look at not estrogen. I also want to look at insulin, potentially estrogen as well. But I want to see, I think about when we have a fatty liver, we probably are consuming a lot of sugar on top of eating a lot of saturated fats. A sugar usually lends to a fatty liver. I honestly, it's the first place I go when I think about a fatty liver is I think about alcohol and sugar. And so I want to be looking at blood glucose levels. I want to make sure that we're reducing our sugar intake. Even fructose requires to be broken down in the liver before it turns into glucose. I mean, why the liver has that job too? Right. All the other jobs. And so we just have to I think fruit is phenomenal, but we have to be mindful about, how much fructose we're consuming all the time because your liver's having to manage that. So to me, it's daily decisions. I take a lot of supplements for my liver. I drink a lot of green juice for my liver. I eat a lot of broccoli sprouts for my liver. I think that I think you should build a diet and a lifestyle around supporting your liver. Absolutely. Whether it's drinking dandelion root tea or maybe it's milk thistle, which is actually kind of, in a lot of ways, it's an irritant, it's a poison, but helps to regenerate the liver. And so I know that's my mindset around it. I know that if we had someone who specifically had, a fatty liver, it's definitely significantly decreasing the amount of sugar that they're consuming, alcohol they're consuming. And if they can decrease their medications, that's a big player as well. And really focusing on the right supplements. Definitely you can do a liver detox. Usually when I don't have a full liver detox program, I have a women's hormone program that involves the liver and helping to detoxify it. But oftentimes when I've worked with friends, like I've flown up to Switzerland to do a 7-day liver detox. And that was a very comprehensive experience, including colonics. I mean, the whole nine, drips and all of that. And so, but a simple liver detox could just be a 3-day juice detox or a 3-day green smoothie detox. We're just giving your liver a break from a lot of the other foods you could be consuming.
Yeah.
I don't make it that complicated.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, totally. I recently did, we had Dr. Alan Christensen on the podcast recently. Are you familiar with him? He wrote the Metabolic Reset.
yes, he's a dear. He's one of my best friends.
Yeah,
I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing and just so on it. And I recently did the reset that's from his book, and it really made a difference. I could really feel just honestly actually really changed some of my hunger signaling, which was interesting. And obviously a lot of that has to do with the
resistant starch.
The resistant starch that's in the
All about
shakes.
that resistant starch.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff. I've actually stuck with it. Like even after the detox, I kept putting it in my smoothies because I really do notice a difference with the way my hunger signaling works. It's really amazing. But yeah, that's another great program for folks out there that are looking for a deeper. Yeah.
But get the metabolic reset. You know, Alan's big thing too is like we have got to reset your metabolic flexibility.
Yes.
He's very concerned with insulin sensitivity. He's very concerned because he really sugar leading to that fatty liver. And so, and I love his program. I love the 7-day program or the 10-day program. That metabolic reset is a really phenomenal way. And I had, so often potatoes and so many of those resistant starches are off the table.
Right.
But as you really begin to look at the research and show that actually it's that fiber is so important. The way that it works, it allows us to regulate insulin levels so much better. So yeah, very fascinating.
Yeah, awesome stuff. So I know we're sort of winding down on time, but I really want to make sure that I get to this because this is a personal favorite topic of mine lately, which is matcha tea, which you've written a book on. And so as we're wrapping up, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because, I gave up coffee about 6 months ago and have just, I don't do matcha every single day, but I do it once in a while, maybe.
Sometimes 3 times a day.
Sometimes 3 times a day. Exactly. Just depending. But I'd love to just hear a little bit of a spiel on matcha and why it's so healthy and just some of the benefits and all that good stuff from you.
Absolutely. Well, I fell in love with matcha. Oh my gosh, when did that book come out? I don't even remember. Many years ago. And, what I think what was so fascinating with it, it was the history of matcha, why matcha was even created for monks almost 1,000 years ago in Japan. And it was just a different way that they make tea leaves, right? It's actually the whole tea leaf, and they actually they put out the matcha leaves in the sun, so they crystallize, and they actually create all those crystals are not only antioxidants, but they are. Am I having a moment? My brain just went. I think I need
It's all good. Sniff some citrus; it'll come back.
I know. And so basically, that matcha tea powder, it crystallizes, and it's going to come to me in just 1 second. After writing that book, the big part of it though is the catechins, which are the EGCGs, and that is what actually is the powerful antioxidant content. They're polyphenols, and what I love so much about polyphenols is they're some of the best, most powerful antioxidants that we can consume inside of our bodies. Dark chocolate has polyphenols. Clearly, matcha green tea has the highest form of polyphenols, but turmeric is in the polyphenol family as well, and so when we're using that matcha green tea, it's like 137, 150 times more potent than most teas out there, especially green tea. So it has profound impact. I mean, research has been shown for boosting metabolism. It's been shown for reducing the risk for cancer, reducing inflammation, but also it has L-theanine in it. And so L-theanine is a powerful amino acid that actually has our brain more calm. And so when the monks had created it, the idea was that it would be energetic and they would be calm but alert. And what was so fascinating is although matcha does have caffeine in it, it binds to the antioxidants. And so it's a slow releasing experience. So that caffeine releases over 4 to 6 hours versus coffee, like caffeine from coffee, which happens very quickly. So you don't get that jittery experience when you're drinking matcha. So I think that's a lot of the reasons why people love it. There's really no setbacks. There's no negatives to drinking matcha. There's really only a lot of positives.
And it can be hormone balancing as well, right? I feel like I've read somewhere that it can be estrogen clearing for folks who tend to accumulate too much estrogen. Did I make that up or is that real?
No, it's real. It's real because it has an impact on the liver. So it boosts glutathione levels, and it helps to open up those methylation pathways. Mm-hmm. And so that is why you're going to see matcha playing a big role in hormone support and hormone metabolism.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, I've just recently fallen in love with it. And, one of the main reasons I quit drinking coffee was because of that anxiousness, the anxiety I was feeling from the caffeine. And you're right, with the L-theanine, even though you're having caffeine, it's just so much slower. You don't get that big jolt of energy. I don't feel that anxiety or anxiousness with it. I feel, like you said, alert and, sort of awake, but not anxious. And so, yeah, I'm in love. I'm cha-cha matcha all the way.
I love it. Yeah. And matcha is not acidic. It's alkaline. So that's another big benefit to matcha versus coffee. Coffee is very acidic. And so, yeah, I've always loved it. I always tell people, even if people are really very highly sensitive to caffeine, because again, there still is caffeine in there. I always see that the beautiful thing is that you could just do a quarter teaspoon or a half a teaspoon or versus a full teaspoon. So you can really gauge it and shift it based on what your preference is. And because matcha is ground up literally from the tea leaves, what makes it really unique is that you can cook with it. We add it to our green smoothies every single day. Clearly, I love matcha lattes. I do almond milk matcha lattes all the time. But yeah, you can absolutely put it into recipes. It doesn't mean that matcha pound cake is healthy. Just
Not,
like CBD pound cake. I'm sure there's some antioxidants in both of those. I don't know if it's pound cake. I have no idea. But yeah, so you can have this really pretty green pound cake. Like I love when we go to New York City a couple times a year, and there are so many matcha shops in New York City. This whole thing, and they have got all kinds like matcha soft serve and matcha desserts, matcha everything. And just a heads up, there's a lot of other ingredients inside of those foods.
Totally. We had a place and I was saying I'm Cha-Cha Matcha because that's the name of it that opened up literally on the end of our block. Do you know that place?
Yeah, I've always been to the one in New York.
Oh, it's so good. And it's so bad at the same time because I'm like, I think I might have just developed a $10 a day matcha habit. This is not good.
Yeah, I luckily, there's a company that I love, so they send me a lot of matcha. I'm really blessed.
Nice.
But what was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh, cha-cha matcha. You know what I love about that? It's like you get to watch them make the matcha there. Yes. They have a little setup and the girl it's so fun. Yeah,
it's so fun. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
They're nailing it.
Which is exactly what you want. You want that kind of experience when you go to a store like that or a little restaurant like that.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's almost competing. It didn't quite have the line as big as the ice cream shop across the street, but it's starting to get there. So there's hope for America.
LA's going to be there in no time.
Exactly. Awesome. So this has been so great, Mariza. Tell folks where they can find out more about you, more about the books, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the books are on Amazon, all 7 of them. The newest book is definitely easy to find on Amazon. I have a podcast called the Essential You Podcast, which is all about helping women become the CEO of their health. It's a good place to come and find me. We just hit our milestone episode 100 there, which is so fun. And then, Instagram is a great place to connect. I share a lot of recipes there and a lot of great information on thyroid and liver and lots of different ways to support your hormones. And that's just at Dr. Mariza, DrMariza.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us. This was super fun.
Yeah.
Hey, I had a great time.
Yeah, awesome. And next time you're in LA, let's get a matcha.
Matcha was in LA. Oh my God. I love it so much. All the pink and green. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Worthy.
Awesome. All right, folks, thanks for joining us today live. If you're tuning in via Facebook, then we will be here again next week. Otherwise, if you're hearing us live on the podcast, we'll also be here next week. Thank you, Mariza, for being here, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
And that's a wrap, folks. We hope you guys got a lot out of that podcast. It was chock full of information.
Absolutely.
And cool stuff going on.
And if you want to dive deeper, of course, check out the Essential Oils Hormone Solution. We sell doTERRA as well. We are advocates or wellness advocates or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we're really
pushing it.
We're not really sure where the link to do that lives. But if you have any questions, reach out to me as well, because, Jennifer Argandiza's she's one of our longtime bees. She's really into essential oils and is very helpful. Folks are trying to get in and learn more about this. Obviously, Dr. Mariza has a ton of resources as well. So, wherever you can find help, and if you're interested in this, get in there and make it happen.
Yeah. Do your thing. Carry around a bunch of little bottles.
Yep.
Get checked at the airport.
Totally. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Love you. Bye.
Bye.